Hey, good morning. This is Douglas Smith. I am DHS Realty broker owner, and I'm doing a five-part series on working with a tenant. Today is part 3 of 5. I do a series every week, and it'll be a 5-part series. So this week we're talking about working with a tenant. We ended yesterday with the fact that we're going to go meet the tenant. When we meet the tenant, we're going to have a home buyer packet or a tenant packet. It's going to be generic on the outside, something like tax guide. Inside, you're going to have your resume, references, a little bio about yourself. You're going to have the IBS, the information about brokerage services. And we're going to have probably a template of the buyer-tenant rep agreement. With all you need on that is at the top, your name goes here, completely have it filled out. And remember, it's called a buyer-tenant rep agreement. You should go ahead and address compensation in that for both a buyer and a tenant, because you sometimes could work with a tenant that turns into a buyer, and you could sometimes work with a buyer that turns into a tenant. So that way you don't have two separate agreements, but it's the same form. It's called a buyer-tenant representation agreement. Go ahead and put your fee, your compensation in that for both being a buyer's agent and a tenant's agent. So when you meet the person there, you're going to, obviously you've already given them the IBS, because when you send them properties, when you send them an email, you need to have the IBS above the signature line in the body of the email, in the body of the email. So you've already appeased TREC when it comes to providing the IBS. I don't ever require anybody to sign anything when I meet them the first time, and there's no law that says that. What you do have to prove is that you gave them a packet. So if you make it a habit and you always give a buyer, tenant, seller, landlord your little home buyer packet, then you have basically, you can prove by precedent that you have enough people that you can call that will remember you gave them a home buyer packet. So you show the property, you've already made an appointment, you've also texted the agent to make sure it's available. Now you're in the property and the tenant looks at you and says, I like it. What would be the next step? You text the agent one more time to make sure it's still available. You ask them what application they need for the tenant to fill out. You ask them what forms they need for you to get paid. Generally, it's a W-9 of your broker and a form called an agreement between brokers regarding residential leases. On that form, you're going to put your commission as a tenant agent, but also there's a little section where you would want to put 3% in there in case in a year your tenant decides to buy the home. That way you've protected yourself with that client and you can be their agent. And you're also going to stay in touch with that tenant throughout the 12 months or 24 months or 5 years they're there as tenants. And the best way to do that is befriend them on social media. That's the one thing that generally doesn't change is somebody's social media. What does change is email addresses and phone numbers sometimes. But try to befriend everybody you know on social media, and then you're going to be regularly posting about yourself, that you're a realtor, posting information, lead with abundance, lead with value, lead with knowledge and data about what the properties are selling for every month in the county surrounding where you work. And then at that point, you're going to go ahead and look at the tenant and say, give me about 40 minutes and I'll send you some documents. You'll send them a PDF of the lease app. They'll fill it out. They'll scan it back to you. You'll then forward that over to the agent that's representing the landlord, and you'll ask that agent how they want to be paid for the lease app. And if they say, hey, Jackie, if they say do it electronically, then do it via PayPal, Zelle, Venmo, a Cash App. I think the days of bringing a check to anybody are basically over. There are some old timers, some old guard that believe in doing checks, but you know, the future, you got to move into it or you'll be in the past. And the future is you ask the title company for wiring instructions. You get the earnest and option wired if it's a sale. And if it's a lease, you ask the landlord agent, what's the easiest way to get the app fee over? And it's going to be electronic about 99.9% of the time. So you'll do that, you'll sit back, and you'll basically wait for an answer. And that's what we'll finish up tomorrow. We'll start tomorrow is the answer back from the landlord agent that you got the property and what the next steps are. Y'all remember today we have training at 10 a.m. at 8005 Fall Meadow Circle in Plano. It won't be where you can call in because this is going to be a live event. It's going to be where I'm knocking on a door to list a home. I'm going to have an agent in my office answer it, and I'm going to walk through the house. I'm going to establish a rapport. We're going to sit down at the kitchen counter, and I'm going to walk through how I explain the paperwork from A to Z and leave with a sign in the yard, and I'm going to put a key box on the door. It's a can't miss training if you can make it. I am going to have it recorded by another agent as they walk around and watch me interact with the seller all the way to the listing, paperwork in the kitchen, and walking out the door and getting my sign out of my car and putting a key box on the door. So it's going to be great. If you can't make it, I will record it. It will be posted on all social media, and that would be on GroupMe, on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, and on my YouTube page. And then we're going to have training on Friday also, and that Friday training is going to be working with a buyer. And that's at 11 a.m. at Truly Title, and we're going to have lunch, and that will be at 11, and that's at 2901 Dallas Parkway. It's in Plano, in between Park and Parker on the west side. And a shout out to Truly Title, one of the best title companies that I've ever worked with. They're so professional, and they've got a great staff: Graham, Callie, Navette, Josh, and then, you know what? You can't be at a title company without having a great lender to close your buyer out with, and that's Brooks Kelly with Hometown Lending. Just an incredible professional. Has a team of probably 10 to 12 RMLOs working with him, and just incredible. Without doubt, in my opinion, without any reservation, he's the best lender I've ever worked with in 30 years. You can always reach him at 214-402-2647. He's got a great team, a support team. Y'all be safe. Go get some.